Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for a regressive to talk down upon you? Well, if you are, you're at the right place.
Donald Trump supporters weren't the only ones. You could cram this whole goddamn year into a basket of deplorables.
Yeah, and I would probably put you into a basket of deplorables. You're probably one of the worst things in 2016 if I were to make a comprehensive list of top 10 people who I think have ruined 2016 in your existence alone. And I'm not even a big Trump supporter.
Number one, everybody cool died. We should have known we were in for a rough year when David Bowie, Alan Rickman, and Abe Vigoda all died before we even made it out of January.
You know, he actually makes a good point. Everybody cool did die, including Prince and Carrie Fisher. I didn't think I would actually agree with Steve Shives on something. Maybe not all regressive liberals are reptilians.
I could get cute and say America, but that would be redundant, as we all know America died about a week after Halloween.
This comes from a Hillary Clinton supporter. For some reason, thinks that the election of Hillary Clinton would not be the death of the United States of America.
Number two, climate change may have reached a tipping point.
Judging by this, I feel like he was a huge Al Gore supporter. That's right. He also, in one of his videos that I've covered, supports government subsidies. Government using taxpayer money to pay for technology that doesn't work and to pay for companies to completely become bankrupt. Basically corporate welfare, which was, let's see, something that even Bernie Sanders disagreed with, was corporate welfare, although he probably agreed with subsidizing green energy. Wouldn't surprise me. The irony in that. It's amazing.
There was that, but the big climate change related story from this past year was the fact that the world surpassed a level of 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the highest level ever measured in human history, a level so high that it may now...
So I just want to make sure that we all heard that. The highest record of carbon dioxide in human history. If you look at the Earth in whole, I'm not saying that humans don't play a part in climate change on some level. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. This topic isn't really something that I debate a lot because there's just so many opposing opinions and facts. But the highest recorded level of carbon dioxide in human history, if you take the entire history of Earth and you measure it by carbon dioxide levels, carbon dioxide and heat has always risen. It's always risen. And humans have really, if you put all of human existence on a 12-month calendar, we've only been alive since December 31st and probably the last 12 seconds of the year, or is it the last 1 minute of the year? Somewhere between that. So we haven't been here for very long and we're only recording our history. So yeah, it makes sense that carbon dioxide would be on the rise, especially if we're just recording human history. Strange that carbon dioxide would rise, considering that naturally carbon dioxide rises anyway. But, you know, try telling that to Steve Shives. He's in his own little echo chamber. He has managed to create a YouTube subscriber base that is nothing but an echo chamber. Out of my 500 plus subscribers that I have, not a lot, not every single one of my subscribers agrees with me 100%, and I know this because a lot of my subscribers, or some of them at least, are diehard Donald Trump supporters. I am not a diehard Donald Trump supporter. I wish to see Donald Trump succeed, and I see a lot of things that Donald Trump will, or it seems that Donald Trump is going to be amazing at. I am optimistic about Donald Trump more than fucking naysaying assholes. I think Donald Trump will be decent. I don't think he will be the libertarian president that I want. There was only one guy running that I really was a diehard fan for, and that was Rand Paul.
Number three, Indigenous people were brutalized.
So he's gonna talk about Standing Rock. I really don't have an opinion about Standing Rock. For the most part, I'm not against it as long as it's not government. I mean, it depends on whether or not it was taken through eminent domain, because if it was taken through eminent domain, then I disagree with the government grabbing land. Also, It wasn't the Indians' land, it was historically Indian land. And I would just like to point out, anybody born in the United States, anybody born in the United States is an indigenous person to the United States. I don't care what anybody says. If you were born here, even if your mom moved here, even if your mom moved here in 1990 and assimilated and became a US citizen, and you were born in 1996, then you, in my opinion, are a Native American, because America is your home. So let's just make that clear right now. No matter what color you are, if you were born in the United States, you are a Native American. And this is coming from somebody who has Cherokee Indian blood.
Which described how George Washington had promised to respect the rights of Native Americans, but that soon enough the United States government had overruled him, because after all, what's an Indian anyhow? So it was then, so it seems, shall it always be. Of all the atrocities that stain the history of my country, the degradation of Native Americans seems to be one that we never tire of revisiting.
You know, I completely 100% agree that the Trail of Tears was a fucking terrible aspect. It was absolutely horrific. Any genocide is horrific. Of course, nobody ever addresses the fact that Indians were killing Indians, although I'm not bringing that up to somehow push the notion that the Indian genocide, the Trail of Tears, wasn't a bad thing. It was a terrible thing, but here's the irony. This guy is a seemingly diehard Democratic supporter, but yet he doesn't see the irony in the fact that it was the Democrats that pushed for the Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson specifically signed the legislation that would allow the Trail of Tears to begin. And Andrew Jackson happens to be a Democrat. Yes, I'm going to say Democrat like this when I am trying to put a inference on it. Democrat Andrew Jackson and other Democrats were behind the Trail of Tears.
4. White supremacy was energized. It sure was. White supremacy walked tall and proud with its head held high in 2016. And why? Was there some major cultural event that caused that to happen, that emboldened white supremacists and validated their warped, hateful worldview, like, say, the year-long mainstreaming of a blatantly racist presidential candidate by the mainstream media, which culminated in that racist candidate, who, by the way, was also an unrepentant misogynist who was accused of rape by over a dozen women, not that anybody cared, being elected president of the United States? Because that would have done it if that... Oh shit! That did happen, didn't it? That did happen.
Let me just say, there's nothing better than seeing Steve Shives kind of lose his shit and lose his temper. It's just so funny to me how liberals, or sorry, they don't deserve to be called liberals, how regressives, wannabe progressives, say that the mainstream media mainstreamed a racist, sexist, misogynistic presidential candidate. I don't know how he's trying to, I don't know what he's trying to say, essentially. So he says the mainstream media mainstreamed him. Now, it's strange because regressives have this tactic of going, I don't trust the mainstream media. Unless the mainstream media happens to agree with me, then it's just Fox News that I don't trust. They have this flip-flop type of they have this pendulum that swings back and forth between all mainstream media, unless it agrees with me, and then it's just Fox News. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that trend. Every time I bring it up, people are like, oh yeah, wow, that's really true. See, like I said, I don't know what he means by the media mainstreamed Donald Trump. Wow, I cannot talk. Mainstreamed Donald Trump. What does he mean by that? You see, I don't know what he means by the mainstream media mainstreamed Donald Trump. I agree that, yeah, Donald Trump got the most press out of everybody, out of all the presidential candidates. I would have loved to see Rand Paul rise up, but I think Donald Trump culturally is a good thing. If you mean by mainstreaming that the mainstream media supported him, I strongly disagree. The only support of him I actually saw was from Fox News. And even then, not even all of Fox News really agreed with him, because Fox News oftentimes actually has a lot of libertarians that go on, like Penn Jillette, Gary Johnson, and a few others. Austin Peterson has shown his face on Fox News. Rand Paul has shown his face on Fox News, and they're not diehard Trump supporters, and they're libertarian-leaning people. There's that. And the fact that he called Donald Trump misogynistic while supporting Hillary Clinton, who defended an accused rapist. Not to mention, she called the rape claims, the rape victims or the sexual assault victims, part of a right-wing conspiracy. Yeah, I know Bill Clinton wasn't running for president, but we're talking about Hillary Clinton here and the actions that she supported. Not to mention, she supports Planned Parenthood, like straight up. And whether or not you support pro-choice, I kind of am pro-choice. While I'm not going to get into my views on abortion. Basically, the side that supports her is pretty much the side that really is for destroying the nuclear family, the man and the wife, marriage is evil, blah 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 blah, all that. The fact that he called Donald Trump racist, there's no evidence of this, there's no proof of this. They use an out of context quote. We all know the story. Donald Trump's not racist, get over it. And yeah, Donald Trump was grabbing women by the pussy because he was a star and they let you do it.
Number 5. Ignorance, fear, and intolerance were ascendant. Brexit.
So I just find it kind of funny that he says that Brexit was because of fear, intolerance, and all of that. Fear and intolerance caused Brexit. Imagine that headline. Well, that doesn't sound like a headline that's very far-fetched. Now does it? Sounds like something you would typically hear from big government regressives. Why is it fear that the United Kingdom, a sovereign nation with 4 kingdoms, wanted to keep their country, wanted to govern their own land, and not have a bigger collective of representatives that they did not vote for, by the way? So completely anti-democracy, and I hate democracy, but it's better than oligarchy, even, you know, a semi-big oligarchy, even if that sounds contradicting or like a paradox, or an oxymoron. Anyway, so because the British wanted to govern their own country and wanted to actually choose representatives that governed their own country and didn't want the Germans or the Italians or several other countries to govern their country via vote through the European Union, or they didn't want some big government hotshot in the European Union that doesn't know what life or culture is like in the United Kingdom to decide how they live or how their country is governed, that is somehow related to fear and intolerance. I don't see the problem with it. I do not see the problem with it. Especially if you're somebody, I don't know what Steve Shives' position is, but that's like saying that the Revolutionary War was fought over fear and intolerance. They wanted to secede from Britain, from the Great Britain, the King George. So they were full of fear and intolerance because they thought that the 13 colonies should govern themselves. How dare they?
Trump.
See, while I wasn't totally excited for Donald Trump at the beginning of this election, like I said, I was a Rand Paul supporter, then an Austin Peterson supporter, but I don't think Trump is really all that bad. I think he's saved a bunch of jobs, even if some of them he has used by the initiation of government forests. Others he's been like, yeah, you get to keep more of your own money. I won't take as much corporate income tax from you. And his complete unstable character boosting the fucking markets. Wow. God, I love that guy. I fucking love him so far. And the fact that he's placed somebody who doesn't like the EPA at the head of the EPA. A lot of his heads of a lot of federal agencies who don't like those agencies or who don't even know what those agencies are. And it's a little ironic, and I support it. Not to mention, Donald Trump recently came out in support for Rand Paul's Audit the Fed bill, along with Democrat Ron Wyden from Oregon, who I dislike but like at the same time. Getting shit done. I hope he continues to support that and sponsor that. The only thing that I really don't like about Donald Trump is the initiation of force to keep businesses here, and the fact that he said Edward Snowden was a traitor. I don't like that. It's not really something that I'm for. And the fact that he seemingly has backed off of Hillary Clinton, but Donald Trump's not even president yet at this point. So we still have to wait and see what happens. I'm pretty optimistic. There's some red flags, but I'm pretty optimistic about Donald Trump.
Hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees fleeing for their lives only to be met with suspicion and blame from many of the people in the countries where they're seeking sanctuary. I didn't even mention that yet.
So people are concerned about a dangerous ideology, because you say refugees, and that just makes it sound like a horrible crisis. It's like Jews, right? It's like the Jews fleeing prosecution. No. Muslim refugees are leaving their country because of instability and civil war instead of fighting in their country. Also, Islam, unlike Judaism and modern Christianity and any other religion that you can name under the sun, Islam happens to be one of the most dangerous because the Quran is a call to action. It is to be perceived as a literal text that literally says, kill the infidels. And what is your punishment for leaving Islam or for defying the Prophet Muhammad, who had sex with a 9-year-old? 12-year-old was the most conservative Muslims are willing to go, who had sexual intercourse with a 9 to 12-year-old. That's the religion of Islam. So obviously not all Muslims, I get that, but here's the thing: I don't want an influx of a dangerous ideology coming here through a welfare state. If a Muslim who flees prosecution wants to come to this country, integrate naturally, and find their place here and work on their own, I like illegal immigrants who don't take benefits. I like them. I hate the illegal immigrants who come in and take benefits, or immigrants who come in and take government subsidized benefits. Like I said, if a Muslim wants to come here and integrate into this country, they want to come here illegally, or they want to come here fleeing prosecution and don't expect a single dime of money, I like them because they're most likely going to integrate into the United States and be an active citizen in our society. But since we're talking about refugees that have been brought here through the welfare state, I have a problem with that because it incentivizes them to be lazy and not change their culture and adapt to American culture. Look at Eastern Europe. That moment when Eastern Europe, civilized society, looks a lot like the streets of Iraq, Baghdad.
2016 was just a shitty year, but it wasn't the first shitty year that we've ever had. In 1968, Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were murdered. There was...
Wow, a regressive actually stating a fact that 2016 wasn't the worst year that we've had. Yeah, Martin Luther King was assassinated. That fucking sucks. I think if Martin Luther King lived, race relations would be a lot better than they were today. Excuse me. And I think John F. Kennedy was a terrible thing. The assassination of John F. Kennedy was a terrible thing because in reality he doesn't really fit the democratic mold other than the perception of equality, which is democratic rhetoric. I like him because he was actually really fiscally conservative privately. I think one of John F. Kennedy's quotes, I could be wrong, or one thing that he said was during the space race against Russia, he specifically said that we shouldn't be spending this type of money, but since we're in a Cold War, kind of the end justifies the means. So I have a huge amount of respect for John F. Kennedy in that sense. He wasn't a complete idiot. There's that.
Fucking Richard Nixon was elected president of the United States.
It's funny because I'm starting to notice a pattern here. It's fuck Republicans, fuck conservatives, fuck Donald Trump, racist, sexist, misogynistic. I don't like Richard Nixon either. I think the drug war is fucking terrible. Nonetheless, this is a guy who wanted Hillary Clinton elected, who probably would have been a mirror image of Richard Nixon, but worse. But it's funny because he probably idealizes Lyndon B. Johnson, or who is that one guy who, Roosevelt, who kind of put Japanese in interim camps. He probably won't acknowledge the fact that that was done by Democrats either. Just like when he talked about the indigenous Americans, Indians, being massacred and genocide, he didn't mention that it was done by, let's see here, Democrats.
1968 ended with Apollo 8, so at least they could finish the year on somewhat of a high note. What the fuck have we got?